his estimate is correct, of people. Now, the first explosion did occur at 8:42 in the morning. Some people might not have been at work yet, but many people here in New York, a workaholic town, get to work early, particularly those who are watching the markets, the overseas markets, and this is the financial center of the United States and, of course, of New York City as well.
Yeah, we have hesitated to use specific numbers, but Mayor Giuliani is saying it's a horrendous number of lives lost, and it could be in the thousands.
We want to go now to Ray Kelly, who's a former police commissioner here in New York.
We are going to now cut into the network coverage to bring you back here to New York City to tell you new information that we may have about the situation here. I'm Jane Hansen with Jim Rosenfield.
And good day to you all. We want to go right to Tiwa Chang, who is standing by, we are told, with Mayor Giuliani, who can give us the latest information on casualties, what we know about anyone who may have perished in this act of terrorism, as it's being called. Tiwa, are you there?
Yes, Jim, I'm here. I cannot tell you where I am because for security reasons, the mayor's office and the police department have moved the emergency center away from Lower Manhattan, evacuating the police headquarters to a degree, and they also left the emergency bunker, which is the 7 World Trade Center right next to where the 2 Twin Towers were. I talked to the mayor directly. I rode up with his motorcade, and he said, when I asked him about the 4 planes that were in the air that were possibly filled with bombs or whatever may be the case, he said, that's not a problem. That has been taken care of. I don't know what he meant by that, but he said that is not a concern now. I also ran into the fire commissioner, Mr. Von Essen, Thomas Von Essen. I asked him how many casualties were there. He said, I know many, many firemen and police officers were in those buildings when they went down. I do not know the extent. At this point, it's believed to be many, many hundreds, at least, if not thousands of people, firemen and policemen inside those buildings. We are now at a secret location. They've asked all of us not to broadcast it because they are now regrouping here to try and determine what to do to see if there's any possible further attacks at this point and how to triage people and take care of the emergency management at this point. Can't tell you where I am, but I am in the city somewhere, and that is actually the latest that I got just about 5 minutes ago from both the mayor and the fire commissioner. Now back to Jane and Jim in the studio.
Tiwa, what is the mayor saying about, we've got a city that's a little panicky at the moment. We have an awful lot of people who are either stuck in town, they can't get home from their office buildings. There are virtually no modes of transportation. I've been told that they're shutting off power to some buildings in Lower Manhattan now. What can he say to these people to help them
Jane,
as they try to sort?
Jane, I walked from my apartment on the west side all the way downtown, and I have to tell you, the people are calm. This reminds me very much of when I was in Beirut in a war situation. People are out walking on the street, walking away, most people walking away from downtown Manhattan, walking north, uptown, but very calmly. A lot of people standing by radios because of the and televisions and stores. Some of the store people, it reminds me of the blackout situation where we've had a lot of calm and people pulling together. I have not seen any panic. I walked all the way downtown. Now, obviously, in Lower Manhattan where the explosion occurred, there probably, I'm sure there was. But as far as the people leaving the area, it's very calm. And people are listening by cars that have their radios on. Stores have their televisions on. There's a sense of unity of people and also just a sickening feeling at what has happened in the sense that this, can't imagine that this would happen. But so far from what I've seen, from walking down, I walked down 9th Avenue and 7th Avenue and 6th Avenue, it was very calm the whole way down there. In terms of what will happen after this, that's what they're working toward, and they seem to feel the main concern now is the number of people who are injured, trying to get them to hospitals, and also the many, many people, scores of people who have been killed in this clearly what appears to be a terrorist attack, but that's not even confirmed yet at this point.
So, Tiwa, in a word, as far as any kind of specific advice from Mayor Giuliani as to what New Yorkers and commuters who have come to New York today to carry out their business.
Hang on 1 second, Jim.
Yes.
We are listening to Tiwa Chang, who is with the mayor. And
okay, what the mayor said in the news conference, okay, because I rode up with the caravan. I spoke to him directly. I only asked him about the planes, and I asked the fire commissioner about the number of injured and killed. The mayor has said in his news conference he's asking people to remain calm. I have to tell you, from what I've seen, certainly in Lower Manhattan, walking toward the bomb sites, and that's what they have to be called at this point, I would assume, is that there's a lot of calm, people working together, stores giving out water, Television's on. People are trying to get the news of what has happened. People talking to each other. A few people walking down toward downtown to try and reach their children at the schools and also at the Borough of Manhattan Community College, which is also near the bomb site on West Street. But the mayor did ask for everyone to basically stay calm, probably stay at home, and to certainly stay away from Manhattan today if you're in any of the outer boroughs.
All right, thank you, Tiwa. Obviously, we will come back to you as the management of this city regroups and tries to figure out what their next steps should be.
Okay.
We have this to report to you, that apparently United Airlines has confirmed or has said that another of its airliners is crashing, quote unquote. We have not confirmed which airline that was, but there was some talk earlier that it was a Boston to Los Angeles airplane that they weren't sure where it was. So we don't know if that's that airplane or not, but there apparently has been another crash of an airline.
Involving a United Airlines airliner. We'll get you that information just as soon as we get any details on that. And in the meantime, Brian Thompson is standing by live for us right now at Newark Airport, one of the 3 major airports shut down at this hour.
Here at Newark Airport, this was one of the first airports to shut down nationwide. One of the reasons is one of the planes that came out of Newark Airport, a United flight number 93, was flying from Newark to San Francisco, and that was hijacked as well. You may have heard that by now, into Pittsburgh, where it was crashed in Pittsburgh. We don't have, of course, the full listing of planes and airports, but the situation you see behind me is an indication of security nationwide at all airports here. The Port Authority have blocked off the entrance to the Air Traffic Control Tower, the administration building, and to their police headquarters. Officers armed with shotguns and sniper rifles, AR-15s, according to the police here. You see that site all over the airport as well. Now I'm going to ask my photographer, Jim Roberts, to take you to the site that has just devastated the New York metropolitan area. Over the tails of parked Continental Express Airlines, because this airport is shut down and for the most part evacuated now, you can see what remains of the World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan. About 3 hours ago, you would have seen the 2 twin towers sticking above the tails. Now all you see is the terrible smoke that's coming from that scene, as everybody wonders why all of this happened at this point. I'm going to ask my technician, Robert Gonzalez, to roll some tape of the airport itself that we took a few minutes ago. Excuse the bump in the video here, but this is what it looked like about an hour ago here at Newark Airport, as people were told no flights were going out anymore. They had to turn around, go to their homes, go to hotels, go to wherever, find rental cars. Thousands of people at this airport, the busiest airport in the New York metropolitan area, with nothing but an extremely trying day ahead of them, lining up, waiting for cabs, limos. Some people were actually walking over to the rental car areas that we talked to, and nobody understanding how this could happen, why this could happen, and the magnitude of what had happened.
But we must leave you at this moment because Governor Pataki apparently is speaking now, and he is on NBC, and let's go take this live.
Ability had been eliminated through security measures. I mean, obviously no one can predict an airliner or 2 airliners crashing into these buildings, but was there some sense that security had been shored up?
You know, you do everything you can. You make sure that people don't get into the towers without being inspected. You make sure that people can't park under the towers, but you just can't be prepared for a plane to fly into one of the towers or 2 planes to fly into the towers. It's a horrible, horrible situation. Our heart goes out to all those whose families are at risk, and we're just going to do everything we can to respond and be supportive and helpful too.
Obviously, the loss of life is the primary concern right now in helping those who've been injured. But if you will, at least talk to me a little bit about the other impact of this building. This is, for example, as Tom and Katie and I have pointed out, the world financial center, the hub of finances in the world, if not at least here in the United States. What type of damage has been done to the financial infrastructure of this country?
The economic impact is something we can talk about as the days unfold. Right now, we still have to focus on making sure we save as many people as possible, help those who are injured, help with an orderly removal of the people who are leaving downtown and leaving the city. We're going to focus on that, and be concerned about what may or may not be the economic consequences once the immediate crisis is passed.
All right, do you have plans to get down to this area?
Yes, I'm in the city, and I've been in touch with the mayor, and we're going to be continuing to do everything we can.
Governor, what about other emergency procedures for the city of New York in the next several days in terms of what's going to remain shut down and so on? A lot of people have this as a destination. A lot of people, millions of people live here.
Tom, right now we do have limited service out of the city. We have both the Metro North and Long Island Railroad running out. We have the George Washington Bridge open. The tunnels are shut for security reasons. We're not having traffic other than emergency traffic come into the city. And I think at this point it would be extremely unlikely that we're going to have many people coming into the city tomorrow. We're going to be continuing to try to deal with the horrendous situation downtown.
Thank you very much, Governor. I know it's been a long and difficult day, and it will go on for you and for all New Yorkers for a long, long time, unfortunately.
Well, our prayers are with the families and the people whose lives are still at risk.
Thank you very much, Governor.
Thank you.
We want to go now, Matt, to Jim Miklaszewski, who is at the Pentagon. Jim, a lot of these flights were transcontinental flights, heavily loaded not only with passengers but with fuel.
That's right, Tom, and we just learned a few moments ago that the U.S. Navy is dispatching a couple of aircraft carriers from Norfolk, the JFK and the George Washington. One will be stationed off of New York. The other will be stationed in the Atlantic as close to Washington, D.C. as they can get. They'll be there to provide any possible military support that may be needed, including flying any kind of air cover should there be any additional warnings of any further terrorist attempted attacks. Now, as we stood here this morning, you can see the smoke is still billowing. The smoke just in the past few minutes has changed from black to white, a strong indication that they're throwing more water on the fire, as we saw from other vantage points. But the priority now is to get the fire under control. A casualty count is impossible at this point, Tom. As you've seen from the earlier pictures, the plane opened a huge wide gash in the side of the building. We're being told between the 4th and the 5th corridors. It smashed through the E and D rings, and people who were in that area tell me that debris and parts of the plane actually penetrated deep all the way into the B ring. There are 5 rings, A through E, and it entered in the E ring, so it plowed through a number of the rings. The priority now, as I said, is accounting for the casualties. Medevac helicopters have been flying in and out. You hear the ambulances. Occasionally, we've even seen F-16s flying low routes around the Pentagon and over Washington, D.C., flying those CAPs or air patrol missions that are usually flown in combat. But to see 2 aircraft carriers moved in locations off the United States to provide air cover, Tom, I mean, that's the kind of thing you normally see in a war zone.
Mick, can you tell me, was that chosen randomly where they hit the Pentagon? Can you tell us what the function of those people in that particular ring was, where it was hit?
Well, it's interesting because a number of people, and this really wasn't sarcastic, but they said, well, they hit on the wrong side, because just the opposite side of the building, of course, you have the offices of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Secretary of Defense, Donald Rumsfeld. We were on that side of the building when the plane hit. We felt the building shake, the windows rattle, and looking outside immediately saw people on the run. There was pandemonium in the hallways. Now that section of the Pentagon, I thought at first when it was described to me that it may have hit in an area where some of the special operations offices are located. The Assistant Secretary for Special Operations is located near there, but the plane actually hit maybe about 60 to 70 feet to the right of that location. In that part of the building, there's it's very near a mall area, actually, where they have a shopping area for Pentagon employees. After all, there are 25 to 30,000 employees in there on any given day. And also in that part of the building, you had many Navy personnel, many reserve personnel. I bumped into many Army personnel who are adjacent to that. They think everybody's all right. The Navy people I talked to said they still had a few people that were unaccounted for. But again, it's going to be impossible to tell exactly what the casualty count is in there until they get that fire under control.
Matt.
All right, Jim Miklaszewski outside the Pentagon, thanks very much. Joining us now is General Norman Schwarzkopf, who was the commander of all forces in the Persian Gulf War. General Schwarzkopf, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Obviously, you've seen the footage, I'm sure, of the Pentagon and of southern Manhattan. We haven't seen much footage outside Pittsburgh. What are your thoughts this morning?
Well, you know, it's a very, very sad day for this country. It's really a sad day for the world as far as I'm concerned, and your heart goes out to all those families, and your prayers go out to all those people who lost their lives.
We are fighting a war now, it seems, a terrorist war here in this country. The question is, how do we go about fighting it, General?
Well, you know, that's one of those easy questions to ask and one of those very tough questions to answer. The deterrence against terrorists is almost impossible because these are people who could care less about their own survival. And normally deterrence is just says, you know, you hit me and we hit you back harder. And in this case, these people don't care whether they lose their lives or not, and therefore it makes it doubly tough to deter. The fact is that the world is getting smaller, and you know, terrorism has come to our shores because we have the ability to span oceans and great distances in a very short time.
Yeah, General, have you been able to talk to anyone at the Pentagon and get some updates on who may have been injured or lost?
No, I mean, the information that I've heard is basically what you all have, and that's it. You know, they didn't hit the very critical parts, and therefore maybe we don't have as many casualties there. But when you look at what happened at the World Trade Center and the number of casualties that they probably have there, it's just horrendous.
General Schwarzkopf, hi, it's Katie. I'm just wondering, I mean, obviously you've been in the military for a long, long time. Have you ever heard, or is this a method of destruction that the U.S. military was aware of and had concerns about, where they would actually, hijackers would use a plane as a flying bomb?
Well, Katie, you know, Tom Clancy wrote a book about just that. Several years ago, he wrote a book about a Japanese pilot crashing his 747 directly into the Capitol building and wiping out the national government. And so it's not something that's new. Obviously, what's kind of shocking is we thought we had good protection against hijacking of aircraft, and what's very apparent today is that something needs to be done about that if this many aircraft can be hijacked
Meaning security
Also,
at airports across the country, General?
Well, that and many other measures that could be taken, but I mean, it's kind of frightening when you consider the number of aircraft that were simultaneously hijacked and apparent with, I don't know, I can't say with apparent ease, I don't know, but it did in fact happen, and that's kind of frightening in itself.
Well, also, General Tom Brokaw here, the failure of intelligence here. I know it's always easy to say that at this point, but this is a very sophisticated and obviously widespread, complex operation that was planned. It was very tightly held in the most sophisticated way.
Yeah, Tom, but you and I both know that getting inside the intelligence, getting inside a terrorist group is probably the most difficult type of penetration that you can do. I mean, you've got to have somebody on the inside that can let you know what's going on, and that's not always the easiest thing to do in this type of terrorist organization.
All right, thank you very much, General Norman Schwarzkopf. We'll be back in touch with you throughout the day as we get more information. We'd love to get your oversight on all of this if we can.
Okay, Tom.
Well, let's go to Paul Bremer now, Ambassador Paul Bremer, who's the chairman of the National Commission on Terrorism. Mr. Ambassador, do we have any idea whatsoever who may be responsible for this?
Well, as you were just saying, we have a massive intelligence failure and a huge security failure that's going to have to be looked into. Analytically, there probably are 4 possible candidates. There's the Osama bin Laden al-Qaeda group that you've been talking about. There is the possibility of a Middle Eastern group such as Hezbollah or the Palestinian Islamic Jihad conducting an attack like this. And there are at least 2 states which at least are capable of such an attack, and that would be Iran and Iraq. So you have probably not more than 4 suspects.
How do we begin to find out who is responsible?
Well, the good news is that the hijacking 4 airplanes is a very complicated operation. Even hijacking 1 is complicated. And they will have left some trail behind them. They will have had to have checked in. They will have had to have purchased tickets either under their name or alias names. They will have had to have showed pieces of identity. There will be a trail that will lead back from the hijackers at some point to the perpetrators. It may take some time, but we'll get there.
You're an expert on national security matters, Ambassador. How is this country going to have to change?
Well, I think it's one of those great challenges of fighting terrorism is to find the balance between being tempted to overreact but also being absolutely certain, as the President said this morning, that people understand we're not going to take this sitting down. And I think once the perpetrators have been identified, and I believe they will be, the United States will have to retaliate with the full force of its military as hard as it possibly can. This is an act of war. It's an act of war that some have described as a domestic Pearl Harbor. In many ways, it's worse than Pearl Harbor. I think we will probably find the casualties are going to be higher than they were at Pearl Harbor. In Pearl Harbor, we knew immediately who had done it, and we therefore knew what the return address was. It was Japan. Here, we have higher casualties, less certainty as to where the attack came from, and therefore a more difficult response. But there must be a very strong military response to this act of war.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Paul Bremer, who is a longtime colleague of Henry Kissinger and a veteran of national security affairs in this country. This is routine in times like this. The Taliban ambassador to Pakistan has condemned what he called the terrorist attack, saying this is a terrorist act. We strongly condemn, as the Taliban have given shelter to the Saudi militant Osama bin Laden, of course, and he's been accused by the United States in the past of masterminding these kinds of attacks. So they're at least on the record, from a rhetorical point of view, of saying we had nothing to do with this.
Let's go to Martin Fletcher, NBC's Martin Fletcher, Tom, who is in Israel right now. Martin, tell me the reaction by the Israelis to this turn of events here in the United States.
Well, of course, everybody has been very, very quick to express complete solidarity with the United States. The Israelis, of course, are very experienced in these kind of things. They've offered to send all their emergency help they can to the United States. They've also, by the way, just closed the Israeli airspace just in case things do spread. But among the Palestinians, there's a different reaction. Yasser Arafat immediately expressed complete horror, condemned the attacks completely, but on the same time, in some places on the streets, in the Palestinian towns, there's been a rather strong expressions of support, of delight even. There were 3,000 Palestinians took to the streets, we're told, in the West Bank city of Nablus, and smaller demonstrations also in East Jerusalem, Tulkarm, Bethlehem, other Palestinian towns in support of the bombers. Happy of these few Palestinians at what has happened. But of course, that's just, we don't know how widespread that is, but there have been some clear support, demonstrations of support for the bombings.
But Martin, we should point out...
I must stress, the Palestinian leader, I should stress that Palestinian leaders all condemn totally the bombings.
We should put into some perspective for us, if you could, Martin, how displeased many Palestinians are with the United States right now about their feelings that somehow the U.S. is siding more with Israeli and with the Israelis in terms of what's going on in the Middle East.
Well, there's complete support across the board, belief among Palestinians that the United States and Israel are one. That the United States is together with Israel in the situation here in Israel and the West Bank. They believe the United States completely supports Israel and therefore deserves to some kind of attacks against the United States. There have been many calls here, especially in recent weeks, by the way, in some of the Palestinian media, for attacks against the United States. So there is a great feeling of anger, a great belief that America supports Israel, and a great belief also that Israel, without American support, could not be as aggressive in its retaliation against Palestinian suicide attacks as it is. So
but Martin, that's really
a feeling, strong feeling.
I was just going to say, Martin, that sentiment.
Sorry, Katie,
I was just going to say that sentiment is really nothing new. Has it been exacerbated in recent weeks in terms of how the Bush administration has been dealing with the Mideast?
I think it has been exacerbated because throughout the last 11 months of the fighting, there was always a feeling among Palestinian leaders that the worse the fighting got, the more likely it would be that the United States administration would intervene, would try to help impose a solution on the Palestinians and the Israelis. The Palestinians have always wanted an international force to get involved, believing that's the only way to really get to a solution, an imposed solution. And what they're seeing from Washington is, if anything, President Bush backtracking from that, making it rather clear in several statements from American leaders that Israel and the Palestinians should get on with it, and that until there's a real possibility of peace talks, America won't get involved. That's the belief of Palestinians. But of course, I just want to stress that this Palestinian anger, we don't know that has anything to do, of course, with what happened today.
All right. Thank you, Martin Fletcher, in Israel this morning, this afternoon.
I was going to say we have a couple of other developments that we ought to share with everyone. as ripple effect seems like an understatement. The U.S. borders with Mexico and Canada now have been closed. White House sources are saying all principals in the White House, senior Bush advisors and officials like the Vice President and the President himself are either in the Situation Room or in bomb shelters. They will not say exactly where the President is, except to say that he is safe. There have been comparisons to Pearl Harbor this morning. 2,400 people were killed in Pearl Harbor on that attack on December 7, 1941. It is likely that the death toll today will be higher. The political magnitude of this is yet to be fully calibrated as well, but as we have been saying throughout the day, this is a new form of warfare against the United States.
And as Ambassador Bremer said, in that case, we had the return address.
Right.
It's still certainly unclear and may remain unclear who was responsible for these absolutely horrendous attacks.
Christian Martin is a producer for Dateline NBC, and he joins us now.
And good afternoon once again, everyone. I'm Jim Rosenfield along with Jane Hansen. We are sort of working in tandem with NBC News. We want to bring you the very latest in local information that might be of importance to our local viewers. And we have just heard from Mayor Giuliani a short time ago. Let's listen in to what he had to say.
Go north. Get out of southern Manhattan for two reasons. The dangerous smoke condition, and secondly, we need all of the open space we can get to evacuate people from the World Trade Center. What we've heard is, I think, what you've heard, which is that there are two different planes hit the two towers of the World Trade Center. There was an attack of some kind on the Pentagon, which was confirmed to me by the White House. The Defense Department, and I don't know, I don't believe so. The Pentagon is what I was told. The military has sealed, or is trying to seal the airspace around New York City. I assume they're doing the same thing with Washington. We know, because we've seen several jets up there, American jets up there. We have our helicopters up in the air also. So we hope right now that things are stable, but the evacuation effort from lower Manhattan is going to be horrendous. And it's probably the most horrifying thing I've ever seen in my whole life, watching people jump from that building.
That was Mayor Giuliani within the past hour, and his advice right at the top of that sound was go north.